Hey everyone. Tonight we're diving into the rugged, dusty trails of the American frontier. Picture this. You're standing on a windswept plain, the sun dipping low, casting long shadows over creaking wagon wheels. The air smells of sagebrush and possibility, but danger lurks in every river crossing and mountain pass. You probably won't survive this unscathed disease, storms, or a bad roll of the dice could end your journey before it begins. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I'm doing here. Drop a comment with your location and local time. I'm curious who's joining us from across the globe. Now, turn down the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soft background music, and let's get started tonight. You stand in a cramped, smoky tavern in St. Louis, 1830, the air thick with the scent of cheap whiskey and sweat-soaked wool. The room hums with voices farmers, trappers, dreamers like you, all buzzing about one thing, the West. It's not just a place, it's a fever, a promise whispered in every crowded eastern city where the soil's worn thin and the future feels tighter than a noose. You clutch a crumpled broadsheet, its ink smearing under your thumb, touting tales of fertile valleys and rivers glittering with fish. The Louisiana Purchase, that massive land grab in 1803, doubled the nation's size, and now it's yours for the taking, or so they say. You're not naive. You know the land isn't empty, and the journey's a gamble where the stakes are your life. But staying here, in this suffocating grind of factories and fading farms, that's no life either. Your boots scuff the tavern floor as you listen to a grizzled man in a coonskin cap spin yarns about Oregon's endless prairies. He's half drunk, but his words paint pictures. Land so rich you can plant a stick and grow a tree. Skies so wide they swallow your doubts. You smirk sounds like a salesman's pitch, but your heart's pounding. Historians still debate whether these stories were hope or hype, luring thousands to their doom or their destiny. You've heard the grim stats. 1 in 10 won't make it, felled by cholera, starvation, or a snapped axle in the middle of nowhere. Yet the West calls, a siren song of second chances. You step outside, the night air sharp against your face. St. Louis bustles, a gateway to the unknown, its docks piled with barrels and canvas. You see families loading wagons, kids clinging to their mothers' skirts, eyes wide with fear and wonder. An odd detail catches you. A woman tucks a single teacup into her bundle, a fragile relic of a life she's leaving behind. It's absurd, carrying porcelain across a wilderness, but it's her anchor to something civilized. You get it. You're carrying your own burdens, debts, regrets, a name nobody cares about back east. The West wasn't just land, it was a canvas for reinvention. The 1832nd saw thousands like you, driven by the panic of 1819's economic crush, or just plain restlessness. You're not alone in this madness. Entire towns emptied, their people lured by government promises of cheap land under the Preemption Act of 1830. You chuckle at the irony. The same government that botched treaties with native tribes now dangles 160 acres for $1. What's the catch? Probably your scalp, you mutter, earning a sideways glance from a passerby. You wander to the riverfront, the Mississippi's dark water lapping at the docks. A steamboat's whistle pierces the night, and you imagine the trail ahead. Months of mud, mountains, and maybe a grave marked only by a stick. You're no hero, just a fool with a dream and a pair of sturdy boots. But the East feels like a cage, and the West? It's a door, wide open, daring you to step through. You toss a pebble into the river, watching it vanish. "Here goes nothing," you whisper, your breath fogging in the chilly air. Tomorrow, you'll buy a wagon. Tonight, you're still just a dreamer, but the frontier's already got its hooks in you. You pass a preacher on the street, shouting about salvation in the wilderness. "God's country," he hollers, and you roll your eyes. If it's God's country, he's got a twisted sense of humor, sending folks into a meat grinder of blizzards and bandits. Still, you tip your hat, because out here, you'll need all the prayers you can get. You head back to your rented room, the tavern's glow fading behind you. Lying on a creaky cot, you stare at the ceiling, the west's promise burning brighter than any lantern. Sleep's hard to come by when your whole life's about to change or end. You wake to the clatter of hoofbeats and the smell of fresh bread from a bakery below. It's dawn, and St. Louis is alive, a city pulsing with people chasing the same crazy dream. You've got a few coins left, enough for a sack of flour and a handshake with a wagon maker. The frontier's call isn't just in your head now. It's in your hands, your feet, your racing pulse. You're not turning back. The West is waiting, and you're ready to roll the dice. You're knee-deep in the chaos of a St. Louis wagon yard, the air thick with sawdust and the sharp tang of pine. Around you, men haggle over axles, women barter for canvas, and a kid no older than 10 wrestles a sack of beans bigger than he is. You've got your life savings pathetic as they are tucked in your pocket, and you're here to build your ark for the frontier, a prairie schooner. It's no luxury coach, just a wooden box on wheels, but it's your ticket to the West. You run your hand along a wagon's frame, its oak rough under your fingers, and wonder if it'll hold up against rivers and ruts. Spoiler, it might not. The wagon maker, a wiry man with a beard like a bird's nest, grunts as he hammers an iron rim onto a wheel. "Conestoga's too heavy," he says, spitting tobacco juice into the dirt. "Prairie schooner's what you want. Light, tough, built to float across the plains." You nod, pretending you know what he's talking about. These wagons got their name from their white canvas tops, billowing like sails on a ship, cutting through seas of grass. You smirk at the romance of it until you see the price. Your savings take a hit, but you hand over the coins. No turning back now. You start packing. Every choice a life or death math problem. A fully loaded wagon can carry about 2,000 pounds, but every ounce counts. You cram in flour, bacon, coffee, luxury of the trail, and a cast iron skillet that weighs as much as your pride. You wedge in a Bible, a quilt, and a rifle you barely know how to use. An odd detail catches your eye. A neighbor tucks a fiddle case under his wagon's seat. "For morale," he says with a wink. You laugh, but you get it. Music might be the only thing keeping you sane when the trail turns cruel. The oxen are next, slow but stubborn beasts that'll drag your dreams through mud and mountains. Horses are too frail, mules too pricey. You pick a pair of oxen with names like Buck and Blue, their eyes dull but their shoulders broad. Yoking them feels like a ritual, the leather creaking as you bind their strength to your hopes. You test the wagon, the wheels groaning under the weight. It's not pretty, but it's yours, a rolling fortress for a journey that'll test every nail and nerve. Historians still debate whether the prairie schooner was a marvel of engineering or a rickety death trap. It was both, really. Built to ford rivers and climb hills, it could still snap an axle on a bad rock or sink in a muddy crossing. You've heard stories of families abandoning heirlooms, grandfather clocks, spinning wheels, just to lighten the load. The Oregon Trail, your chosen path, stretches 2,170 miles from Missouri to the Pacific. You'll walk most of it because riding in the wagon's like sitting on a pile of bricks during an earthquake. Your boots better hold up. You glance at the families around you, their wagons packed to bursting. A woman ties a crate of chickens to the undercarriage. There clucks a strange soundtrack to this madness. "Eggs in Oregon," she says, catching your stare. You nod, impressed by her optimism. Another man, a preacher type, is preaching about the promised land while his wife stuffs a straw mattress into their wagon. You chuckle, hopes the real cargo here, heavier than any sack of flour. The sun's climbing, and the wagon yard's a hive of last-minute fixes. You tighten a rope, check the canvas for tears, and pray you didn't forget something critical, like bullets or a sense of humor. A kid runs by, chasing a stray dog, and you wonder if he'll remember this as adventure or agony. Probably both. The wagon's ready, or as ready as it'll ever be. You climb onto the driver's seat, the wood creaking under you, and snap the reins. Buck and Blue lumber forward, the wagon lurching like a drunk. You're not a pioneer yet, just a fool with a full wagon and a half-baked plan. As you roll out of St. Louis, the city's noise fades, replaced by the creak of wheels and the distant low of oxen. The trail lies ahead, a dusty ribbon cutting through the unknown. You feel the weight of it, not just the wagon, but the choice. You're betting everything on a dream, and the frontier doesn't care if you win or lose. You crack a wry smile. "At least I'll have stories," you mutter, though you're not sure who you're talking to, Buck, Blue, or the wide, uncaring sky. You're on the Oregon Trail now, a dusty scar cutting through endless prairie, your wagon creaking like it's complaining with every rut. Dawn breaks, painting the sky pink, but there's no time to gawk. You're up before the sun, the air sharp with dew and the faint stink of oxen sweat. The routine's already brutal. Yoke the beasts, check the wheels, scarf down a biscuit that's hard as a brick. You walk beside the wagon, boots sinking into dirt, because riding's a fantasy for fools who like bruised spines. The trail's a grind, 10 to 15 miles a day if the weather's kind, less if it's not. You're aiming for Oregon, 2,170 miles away, and every step feels like a dare. The landscape's a tease, all flat grass 1 minute, then a river crossing that could swallow your wagon whole. You ford a stream, water lapping at the axles, and pray the canvas holds. It does barely. Your clothes are soaked, your boots squelch, but you keep moving. The trail's littered with ghosts of other pioneers. A broken wheel here, a child's shoe there, a grave marked by a stick, and a name you don't know. An odd detail sticks with you. A discarded rocking chair, half buried in mud, its owner long gone. Who hauls a chair this far, then leaves it? Someone who learned the hard way that the frontier doesn't care about sentiment. Cholera's the real killer, not bandits or bears. You pass a camp where a family buries their boy, no older than 6, his grave shallow because the ground's too hard. You tip your hat, mutter a prayer, and move on. Water's a gamble, clear streams can hide death. You boil what you can, but fuel's scarce, and time's scarcer. Historians still debate whether poor sanitation or bad luck killed more on the trail, but you don't care about debates. You just want to survive the next mile. Your rations are simple: beans, bacon, coffee when you're lucky. You dream of fresh bread, but hardtack's your reality, so tough it could chip a tooth. You joke to yourself, at least it's exercise. but your stomach's not laughing. The wagon train's your lifeline. A dozen families bound by necessity. You share fires, swap stories, and take turns standing watch. At night, you circle the wagons, not for dramatic standoffs like in the dime novels, but to keep out wolves and thieves. A fiddle player strikes up a tune, and for a moment, the trail feels human. Kids chase fireflies, their laughter cutting through the dark. You smile, then wince as you peel off your boots, blisters on blisters. A woman offers you a sip of her homemade tonic, swearing it cures everything. You drink, mostly to be polite. It tastes like regret and turpentine. The days blur, each one a battle against dust and doubt. You ford another river, lose a sack of flour to a leak. Could be worse, you mutter, eyeing a wagon stuck in the mud, its owner cursing the sky. You help him out, because out here, karma's your only bank. The trail's a teacher, harsh but fair. You learn to spot a storm by the smell of the wind, to fix a wheel with a branch and a prayer. You learn to mourn fast, because the dead don't wait, and neither does the trail. One night, around a crackling fire, a grizzled trapper tells a story about the Donner Party, stranded in the Sierras a few years back, eating their own to survive. The group goes quiet, the fire spitting sparks. You laugh nervously, hope we packed better snacks. But the chill lingers. The trail's not just a path, it's a gauntlet. You lie on your bedroll, staring at stars too bright for the city. The frontier's beauty is cruel, promising everything and owing nothing. You close your eyes, the fiddle's tune fading, and wonder if you'll make it to Oregon or become another ghost in the grass. You jolt awake to the low of oxen and the first light creeping over the horizon, your back aching from another night on the hard ground. The fiddle's melody from last night lingers in your head like a half-remembered dream, but there's no time for nostalgia. The trail's end is finally in sight. After months of dust-choked days and bone-rattling nights, you crest a hill, and there it is, the Willamette Valley, Oregon, stretching out like a green promise under a sky so blue it hurts your eyes. The air smells different here, fresh with pine and damp earth, not the dry bite of the plains. You let out a whoop that startles Buck and Blue, your faithful oxen plodding on like they've seen it all before. You've made it, against the odds that buried so many along the way. But survival's just the opener. Now comes the real show, turning this wild patch into a home before winter sinks its teeth in. You stake your claim under the Donation Land Act of 1,850, a government handout that gives you 320 acres if you're married, half if you're single. It's a sweet deal on paper, luring folks like you with the dream of free dirt, but you know it's no giveaway. Nature's the real landlord, and she charges in sweat and blisters. You pick a spot near a creek, the water gurgling like it's laughing at your optimism. The soil's rich, black as coffee grounds, and you sink your hands into it, feeling the cool grit between your fingers. This is yours now, or as yours as the frontier allows. You unload the wagon, stacking crates under a tarp while the sun climbs, warming your neck. The first priority's shelter, a log cabin, nothing fancy, just 4 walls to keep out the rain and the regrets. You grab your axe, its handle worn smooth from trail fixes, and head into the woods. The trees tower like grumpy giants, their bark rough and fragrant with sap. You swing, the blade biting into wood with a satisfying thunk, chips flying like confetti at a party nobody invited you to. It's back-breaking work, your muscles screaming after months of walking. But there's a rhythm to it. Swing, pause, swing like a slow dance with destiny. You joke to yourself, If I wanted a workout this bad, I could have stayed east and joined a gym. But out here, gyms are for city folks, and your membership's paid in calluses. Neighbors, other trail survivors, show up unannounced, axes in hand. It's the frontier way. A barn, raising without the barn, just folks pitching in because tomorrow it might be their turn. You all work in shifts, felling trees, trimming branches, the air filled with the sharp scent of fresh-cut pine and the chatter of saws. By dusk, the frame's up a one-room skeleton, maybe 12 by 16 feet, big enough for dreams, but small for doubts. You notch the logs, fitting them like puzzle pieces, sealing gaps with mud and moss that squishes cold between your fingers. The roof's next, split shingles layered like scales on a fish, and you climb up there, hammering in the dim light, the hammer's echo bouncing off the hills. An odd detail sticks out. One guy brings a door he salvaged from a wrecked wagon on the trail. It's paint-chipped but hinges solid. Fancy entrance. You quip, and he laughs. Better than kicking it open every time. It's absurd, this recycled portal to your new life. But it fits the frontier. Nothing wasted, everything repurposed. Night falls, and you huddle by a fire outside the half-built cabin. The flames crackling and popping like they're applauding your effort. You chew on jerky, tough as old boots, washing it down with creek water that tastes faintly of minerals. Stars wheel overhead, brighter than any city lantern, and you feel a quiet thrill. This land's yours to shape. But winter's whispering warnings. You've heard tales of the first Oregon settlers in 1843, the Great Migration, rolling in with wagons full of hope, only to face blizzards that buried dreams under snow. They built fast, those pioneers, racing the seasons like you are now. Historians still debate whether the Donation Land Act sparked true prosperity or just a land grab that fueled conflicts with natives. But right now, you're too tired to ponder politics. Your hands throb, blistered, and raw, but there's satisfaction in the ache. It's the price of ownership. You wake stiff, the ground hard under your bedroll, but the cabin calls. Today's the floor dirt for now, packed smooth with your boots, turning to mud in rain but warm underfoot. You joke, at least it's eco-friendly, straight from Mother Nature's warehouse. Windows are holes cut in the walls, covered with oiled paper that lets in a hazy light, like looking through fogged glasses. The chimney's a stack of stones, mortared with clay, and you test it with a small fire, smoke curling up like a signal to the gods. We're here to stay. Inside, you arrange your meager stuff. A straw tick for sleeping, a table from split logs, and that teacup from St. Louis, perched on a shelf like a trophy. It's sparse, but it's home. The air inside, smelling of earth and possibility. As days blur, you plant a garden, turning soil with a hoe that feels like an extension of your arm. Seeds go in corn, beans, potatoes, each one a bet on spring. You fence a patch for the oxen, their lowing a constant soundtrack. Wildlife's everywhere. Deer ghost through the trees, their eyes gleaming in twilight, and you spot a bear print near the creek, big as your hand. Hope he's not renting, you mutter with a grin. The work's endless chopping wood for winter, stacking it high against the cabin wall. The axes swing a metronome for your thoughts. You think of the trail, the graves you passed, and whisper a thanks for making it this far. Community sprouts like weeds. A neighbor invites you to a gathering, sharing venison stew that warms your bones. You trade stories, laughter echoing in the firelight. But solitude hits hard 2 nights when the wind howls, rattling the door, and you lie awake, the cabin creaking like it's alive. You light a candle from tallow, its flame flickering shadows on the walls, and read from your Bible, words blurring in the dim glow. Winter's coming fast, leaves turning gold and red, a warning in color. You rush to store food, dried meat, roots dug from the earth, and insulate the cabin with more mud, your fingers numb in the chill. One canonical event sticks in your mind: the arrival of the Applegate brothers in 1843, blazing a southern route to Oregon that saved lives but tested limits. They built cabins like yours, racing frost, and their grit echoes in every log you lay. An unusual detail: folks burned buffalo chips, dried dung for fuel when wood's scarce, smelling like a bad barbecue but keeping the fire alive. You chuckle. Eau de prairie perfume elegant. Historians debate if homesteading built America or broke its back with failed farms, but you're living it, one blister at a time. As the first snow dusts the ground, you stand in your doorway, the cabin solid behind you, smoke curling from the chimney. It's not perfect leaks in the roof, drafts sneaking in, but it's yours, a foothold in the wild. You breathe deep, the cold air sharp in your lungs, and feel the frontier's pulse. Winter's here, but so are you, ready to endure. You hunker down in your cabin as the first flakes of winter swirl outside, the wind whistling through the chinks like a nosy neighbor trying to eavesdrop. The fire crackles softly, casting flickering shadows on the dirt floor, and you poke at the embers with a stick, the warmth seeping into your bones like a reluctant hug. But you're not alone in this fight against the cold, far from it. Out here on the frontier, where the land doesn't give an inch without a battle, it's the women who often hold the line, their hands calloused from more than just chopping wood. You watch as your neighbor's wife, let's call her Eliza, strides across the snowy yard, her skirt whipping in the gusts, carrying a bucket of water from the creek that's starting to ice over. She's not complaining, not even whispering a curse under her breath. She just gets it done, because if she doesn't, nobody will. You step outside, the crunch of snow under your boots sharp in the crisp air, and offer to help with her chores. She waves you off with a laugh that cuts through the chill like a warm knife through butter. "I've got this," she says, her breath fogging the air. "Been wrestling pigs and plowing fields since before you left St. Louis." You chuckle, thinking, pigs? Hope they're better dancers than I am. But she's serious. These frontier women are the unsung engines of survival, juggling roles that would make a circus performer quit. They wake before dawn, the rooster still snoring in his coop, to milk cows whose udders feel like ice blocks in the morning frost. The milk steams in the pail, a small victory against the cold, and she turns it into butter with a churn that thumps like a heartbeat, steady and unyielding. As you help her stack firewood logs heavy with dampness that make your arms burn, she tells you about the day she birthed her youngest, right there in the cabin, no doctor for miles, just a neighbor woman with a kettle of hot water and a prayer. Screamed louder than a banshee, she says with a wink, but he came out kicking, just like his ma. You nod, impressed, because out here, childbirth isn't a hospital drama, it's a solo act with high stakes. These women act as midwives, doctors, and nurses, all rolled into one, brewing herbal teas from wild sage and willow bark to fight fevers that sweep through like uninvited guests. You sip some of her concoction later, tasting bitter roots and a hint of honey, and joke, tastes like victory, or maybe just bad coffee. She smirks, but you know it saved lives, pulling folks back from the brink when cholera or scurvy knocks. The canonical event that sticks with you is the story of Narcissa Whitman one of the first white women to cross the Rockies in 1836 with her husband Marcus, part of that early missionary wave to Oregon. She kept a diary that reads like a frontier epic, detailing wagon breakdowns, river crossings that nearly drowned them, and the sheer grit it took to plant roots in hostile soil. But Narcissa wasn't just along for the ride. She taught school to native children, tended the sick, and built a mission that became a beacon for later settlers. Tragically, it ended in violence in 1847 when tensions boiled over. But her journey shattered the notion that the West was a man's world. You think about her as you watch Eliza mend a tear in her husband's shirt by firelight, her needle flashing in the glow, turning scraps into something whole again. Historians still debate whether the frontier empowered women or just piled more burdens on their backs. Did it break barriers or just break spirits with endless toil? Some say it gave them a voice in a time when votes were men's domain, while others argue it was survival, not liberation. You see, both in Eliza's eyes, weary but fierce, as she patches clothes, bakes bread from flour, ground by her own hands, and teaches her kids to read by the dim light of a tallow candle that smells faintly of rendered fat. An odd detail catches your eye. She keeps a small tin of snuff tucked in her apron pocket, a habit picked up from trail days, claiming it keeps the mosquitoes honest and the boredom at bay. You laugh, Snuff? That's your secret weapon? Hope it works on bears, too. She grins, offering you a pinch, but you decline. Your sinuses are frontier enough. As the day wears on, you join her in the garden, though it's buried under snow now, planning for spring. She scatters ashes from the fire to enrich the soil, her hands red from the cold but moving with purpose. These women farm like pros, planting corn in rows that stretch like promises, harvesting wild berries that stain their fingers purple, and preserving everything in jars that line the shelves like trophies. You help her check the root cellar, a dugout hole stocked with potatoes and carrots that crunch underfoot, their earthy smell mixing with the damp chill. Lost half last winter to rot, she mutters, but this year, we're ready. You nod, thinking of the women who defended homesteads alone when husbands were off hunting or trading, shotgun in hand, facing down wolves or outlaws with a stare that could curdle milk. Evenings bring a softer side. You sit by the fire as she spins wool from sheep she sheared herself, the wheel humming like a lullaby. The yarn twists under her fingers, destined for socks or scarves that ward off the bite of frontier winds. She tells stories of barn dances where women led the reels, their laughter echoing under rafters raised by communal hands. Danced till my feet bled, she says, but it beat sitting still. You quip. Sounds like my kind of party. Hope the punch wasn't just creek water. Her chuckle warms the room more than the flames. These women build community, too, organizing quiltings where gossip flows like river water, stitching bonds as strong as the fabric. But it's not all rosy. You see the toll in her lined face, the way she rubs her back after hauling water, the quiet moments when she stares at the horizon, missing family left behind. Frontier women lose children to fever, husbands to accidents, yet they endure, baking pies from dried apples that taste like memories, or whipping up stew from whatever the land provides. You share a meal with her family, venison simmering in a pot that bubbles with savory steam, and feel the strength in her resolve. We don't break easy, she says softly, passing you a bowl. You eat, the flavors rich and grounding, and think, no, you don't. You're the glue holding this wild place together. As night deepens, the cabin quiets, the fire dying to embers that glow like sleepy eyes. You head back to your own place, the snow muffling your steps, carrying a borrowed lantern that swings light across the path. The frontier's grit isn't just in the men with their axes and rifles. It's in these women, warriors in calico dresses, shaping survival one stitch, one meal, one determined step at a time. You blow out the lantern, the darkness soft and enveloping, and drift off thinking of their quiet power, a force as enduring as the land itself. You wake to the distant howl of a coyote, echoing through the frost-laced dawn, your breath visible in the cabin's chill air as you stoke the embers back to life with a poker that feels icy in your grip. The fire pops and hisses, sending sparks, dancing like tiny fireflies, and you rub your hands together, savoring the growing warmth that chases away the night's bite. But as you step outside, axe in hand to chop more wood, the crisp scent of pine mingling with the earthy dampness of snowmelt, you can't shake the unease settling in your gut like a bad batch of Eliza's tonic. The land you're claiming, this fertile valley that promised so much back in St. Louis, isn't as empty as the broadsheets made it out to be. Shadows of its true owners linger in every rustle of leaves and whisper of wind, reminding you that your fresh start comes at a steep, unspoken cost. You swing the axe, the blade sinking into a log with a satisfying thud that reverberates up your arms. But your mind wanders to the native trails you've crossed, faint paths worn by feet that knew this ground long before your wagon wheels scarred it. The indigenous tribes, the Chinook, the Nez Perce, the Shoshone, have called this place home for centuries, their lives woven into the rivers and ridges like threads in a blanket you didn't weave. You pause, wiping sweat from your brow despite the cold, and spot a bead of turquoise caught in the dirt near your boot, an odd detail, perhaps dropped by a trader or a native scout. Its vibrant color, a stark contrast to the muted browns of winter soil. You pocket it, feeling like a thief, even though it's just a trinket, and chuckle softly to yourself. Great, now I'm collecting souvenirs from someone else's backyard. Hope it doesn't come with a curse, like that time you borrowed your neighbor's pie back east. The government's promises of free land ring hollow when you think about the treaties signed and shattered like brittle ice on a pond. You remember hearing tales around the trail fires about the Trail of Tears in 1838, that canonical forced march where thousands of Cherokee were herded from their ancestral homes in the southeast to barren reservations out west, their footsteps marking a path of sorrow under Andrew Jackson's iron-fisted Indian Removal Act. The air was thick with dust and despair, families clutching what little they could carry, while soldiers prodded them onward, the cries of children blending with the creak of wagons, not unlike yours. You imagine the scene, the scent of unwashed bodies and fierce sweat, the taste of salt from tears mixing with trail dust, and it hits you that your journey west, grueling as it was, pales against theirs, a voluntary gamble versus a mandated exile that claimed lives by the thousands from disease, starvation, and heartbreak. You set the axe down and lean against the cabin wall, the rough logs scratching your back through your shirt as you gaze at the horizon where mist clings to the hills like a reluctant ghost. The natives aren't ghosts, though they're here. Their villages dotted along the rivers, their knowledge of the land, a map you could never draw. You've traded with them on the trail, swapping beads for salmon that tasted like the sea itself, flaky and rich, with a smokiness that made your mouth water even now. But tension simmers beneath the surface, like a pot about to boil over. Settlers pour in, fences go up, and sacred sites get trampled under boot and plow. You joke to Eliza later that day, as you help her mend a fence with wire that bites into your palms. If I were them, I'd charge admission to this valley. Come see the white folks trip over their own dreams for a nickel." She snorts a laugh, but her eyes are serious, knowing the clashes that flare up like dry tinder in a spark. Historians still debate whether westward expansion was a triumph of manifest destiny or a tragedy of cultural erasure, with some arguing it forged a nation from chaos, while others point to the deliberate dismantling of indigenous ways of life. You feel the weight of it in small moments, like when you spot a group of Nez Perce riders on the ridge, their horses' hooves kicking up snow in silent rhythm, watching your cabin with eyes that hold stories you can't read. They don't approach, but their presence is a reminder that this land holds memories deeper than your shallow roots. You wave tentatively, and one nods back, a gesture as fleeting as the steam from your coffee mug that morning, black and bitter to match your thoughts. As the day wears on, you haul water from the creek, the bucket heavy and sloshing with each step, the cold liquid numbing your fingers through the metal handle. The water's clear, reflecting the gray sky like a mirror. But you know these streams were fishing grounds, teeming with salmon that natives netted in rituals passed down through generations. Now, dams and diversions threaten those ancient runs, and you feel a pang of guilt as you dip your bucket, the water's chill biting your knuckles. The frontier's promise of a new start for you means an ending for others, and that truth sits heavy, like the damp logs you drag back to the cabin for tonight's fire. You're no philosopher, but as you stack the wood, the scent of pine sap sharp in your nose, you can't help wondering if your claim to this land is just a polite word for theft. The day's work doesn't pause for your brooding. You mend a fence with Eliza, her hands deft as she twists wire, her apron stained with earth and yesterday's stew. She shares a story of a Shoshone woman who traded her a woven basket for a needle and thread, the basket's intricate patterns like a language you wish you could read. She knew every plant on this hill, Eliza says, nodding toward the ridge where the riders vanished. Told me which ones heal, which one's poison. Makes you wonder who's really taming who. You laugh, a little forced, and quip. Maybe we're the ones being schooled. Frontiers got more teachers than pupils. But her words stick, like burrs on your coat, as you hammer a post into the frozen ground, each strike echoing like a drumbeat of intrusion. The canonical event that looms large is the Trail of Tears, that brutal march of 1,838, where the Cherokee were uprooted, their homes burned, their lives scattered like leaves in a storm. Thousands died, some say 4,000, others more, their bodies left along trails that still bear their grief. You imagine their footsteps, the crunch of frost under moccasins, the weight of blankets too thin for winter. It's not just history, it's a wound, still bleeding, and you're standing on the scar. An odd detail from a trader's tale comes back. Some Cherokee carried peach pits, planting them at every stop, a quiet act of defiance to root their legacy in soil they'd never see again. You glance at your own garden patch, bare under snow, and wonder if your seeds carry the same stubborn hope. Historians still debate whether the treaties with native tribes were ever meant to be kept or were just paper promises to clear the way for settlers like you. The Indian Removal Act was sold as progress, but it feels like a ledger of losses, land, lives, entire ways of being. You see it in the small things, the way Eliza hesitates before cutting sage for her remedies, knowing it's sacred to the tribes, the way your neighbor avoids a certain grove, whispering it's a burial ground. You're not here to conquer, just to survive. But every fence you build feels like a line drawn in someone else's story. As evening falls, you sit by the fire, the flames licking at a pot of beans that bubble with a savory warmth that fills the cabin. You share a meal with Eliza's family, her kids giggling over a game of knucklebones on the dirt floor, their laughter a fragile shield against the quiet tension outside. You tell a story about a buffalo stampede you saw on the trail, hooves shaking the earth like thunder, and the kids' eyes widen. "Wish I'd seen that," the youngest says, and you smile, but don't mention the buffalo are thinning, hunted to near extinction by settlers and sport. "Maybe you'll see one someday," you say, tossing in a joke. "But don't try riding it. Those horns aren't for show." They laugh, and for a moment, the cabin feels like a fortress against the world's weight. Night deepens, the stars sharp as needles in the black sky. You step outside, the cold air slicing through your coat, and listen to the silence. No coyotes now, just the creak of trees bending in the wind. You think of the natives watching from the hills, their lives upended by the tide of wagons and dreams like yours. You're not the villain in this tale, but you're not the hero either. Just a man with a cabin and a patch of dirt, trying to carve out a life on land that remembers other hands. You head back inside, the fire's glow, a small comfort, and lie on your straw tick, the turquoise bead in your pocket, pressing against your hip. Sleep comes slow, heavy with the weight of a frontier that's both yours and not yours at all. You wake to the sharp crack of a twig outside your cabin, your heart lurching as you grab the rifle propped by the door, its barrel cold against your palm. The dawn's gray light filters through the oiled paper window, casting a ghostly glow across the dirt floor. You peer out, squinting into the mist, but it's just a deer, its antlers like bare branches against the snow-dusted trees. You exhale, the tension easing, but it's a reminder. Out here on the frontier, laws as thin as the air in the Rockies. You sling the rifle over your shoulder and step outside, the frost crunching under your boots like broken glass, the air smelling of pine and the faint smoke from last night's fire. This is no place for courts or constables. Justice wears a tin badge, a rope, or sometimes nothing at all. You head to the settlement a mile off, a cluster of cabins, and a saloon that passes for a town. The trail's muddy, sucking at your boots, and you pass a hand-painted sign, "No stealing, no killing, or else." You chuckle, muttering, "Or else what? They gonna frown me to death?" But the humor fades when you reach the saloon, its swinging doors creaking as you step inside, the air thick with tobacco and the sour tang of spilled whiskey. A crowd's gathered, their faces grim, and you catch the tail end of a heated argument. A horse thief's been caught, a scrawny kid no older than 16, his hands tied with rope that bites into his wrists. The room's a jury, judge, and executioner all in one, and you feel the weight of it like a stone in your chest. Vigilante justice rules these parts, a necessity born of distance and desperation. Without sheriffs or jails, settlers take matters into their own hands, forming committees that mete out punishment faster than you can say, "Objection." You watch as they drag the kid outside, his eyes wide with terror, and tie him to a tree. No trial, just a vote, hands raised like a forest of judgment. They settle on a whipping, not a hanging, and you wince as the leather cracks, each snap echoing like a gunshot. An odd detail sticks out. The kid's wearing one boot, the other lost somewhere, his bare foot pale and trembling in the cold. It's pitiful, and you mutter, "Poor fool should have stolen a horse with better taste in footwear." Nobody laughs. The mood's too heavy, the air thick with the scent of fear, sweat, and justice. The canonical event that looms over this scene is the California Vigilance Committee of 1851, when San Francisco's citizens, fed up with crime in the gold rush chaos, formed a vigilante force that hanged 4 men and banished dozens more. It wasn't pretty, but it was effective, turning a lawless boomtown into something resembling order. You see echoes of it here in this nameless Oregon settlement, where a crowd decides fate with a nod and a rope. Historians still debate whether vigilantes were heroes or mobs, stabilizing the frontier or just dressing revenge in a righteous hat. You lean toward the latter, watching the kid slump against the tree, his back raw but his life spared for now. You turn away, heading to the general store, a shack stocked with overpriced flour and nails. The storekeeper, a wiry man with a mustache like a broom, grumbles about outlaws hitting supply wagons. "Need a sheriff," he says, spitting into a tin can. You nod, but sheriffs are rare out here, and the ones who exist like Wyatt Earp or Wild Bill Hickok, whose names float like legends on the wind, are as likely to be crooked as they are brave. You buy a sack of beans, the weight heavy in your arms, and step back into the cold, where a man in a tin badge leans against a post, his revolver glinting in the weak sunlight. He's the closest thing to law this town's got, but his eyes are shifty, and you wonder if he's here to protect or profit. Outlaws are the flip side of the coin. Men like Jesse, James, or Billy the Kid, their names whispered in saloons like ghost stories. They rob stagecoaches, rustle cattle, and vanish into the hills, leaving behind wanted posters and tall tales. You pass one nailed to a tree, the ink smudged, but the reward clear. $500 for a bandit called Black Jack. You snort. 500? My oxen are worth more than that. But you know these outlaws thrive in the frontier's gaps, where law's just a suggestion and a fast draw beats a fair trial. You've heard of shootouts in broad daylight, bodies left in the dust while townsfolk shrug and move on. Justice here isn't blind, it's armed, dusty, and doesn't ask questions twice. As you trudge back to your cabin, the sun low and casting long shadows, you pass a gallows frame, half-built and abandoned, its wood weathered gray. It's a relic of some vigilante's enthusiasm, never finished, but still a warning. You think of the kid, his one-booted foot, and hope he learns to walk straight, or at least steal better next time. Back home, you stoke the fire, the logs popping like gunfire, and sit with your rifle across your lap. The frontier's law isn't written in books. It's carved in rope burns and bullet holes. You joke to yourself, if I ever break the law, I'm running to Canada, better scenery, worse whiskey. The fire's warmth soothes your aching bones, but sleep comes slow, the night alive, with the creak of trees and the distant howl of something or someone watching from the dark. You're jolted awake by a low, mournful whistle, cutting through the dawn like a ghost calling from the hills. You stumble out of your cabin, the air sharp with frost and the faint smell of coal smoke, your boots crunching on frozen ground as you squint toward the horizon. There, snaking through the valley, is a ribbon of steel glinting in the early light, a railroad, its iron tracks stretching like a promise you didn't ask for. The steam engines puffing in the distance, a beast of progress that's changing the frontier faster than you can spit. You rub sleep from your eyes, the cold biting your fingertips, and mutter, well, ain't that a kick civilization's crashing my homestead party. The railroad's here, and with it, the wild's getting tamed, whether you like it or not. You trudge toward the new depot, a rickety wooden platform thrown up overnight by workers whose hammers still echo in the crisp air. The ground's torn up where ties were laid, the earth smelling raw and overturned like a fresh grave for the old frontier. The Transcontinental Railroad, completed in 1869, linked east to west with iron and ambition, and now its tendrils reach even your corner of Oregon. You watch a train pull in, its brakes screeching like a banshee, steam billowing like a storm cloud trapped in a bottle. Crates spill out nails, flour, glass windows, luxuries that would have taken you months to haul by wagon. You smirk, thinking, guess I won't need to trade my soul for a new skillet anymore. The canonical event is that golden spike driven at Promontory Summit in 2069, uniting the Central Pacific and Union Pacific Railroads in a ceremony that shouted America's triumph to the world. It slashed the journey from Missouri to California from 6 months to 6 days, turning the frontier from a gamble into a commute. You see it in the faces of new settlers stepping off the train, their clothes too clean, their eyes too wide, like they've read too many dime novels. They're not like you, hardened by trail dust and broken axles. They're soft, carried here by steam and dreams. An odd detail catches you. One woman clutches a parasol, its lace fluttering uselessly in the wind. Good luck keeping that pretty in a dust storm. You chuckle to yourself, but there's no malice. You were green once too. The railroad's a lifeline, no doubt. Medicine arrives before fevers turn deadly. Letters from back east come in days, not months. Their ink still fresh, with news of family you left behind. You buy a bolt of cloth from the depot, its weave tight and blue as a summer sky, and imagine Eliza turning it into something useful, like curtains, to soften your cabin's starkness. But the iron horse brings trouble too. Towns spring up around depots, saloons and brothels blooming like weeds, and with them come gamblers, drifters, and men with shifty eyes who'd rather steal than plow. You spot one now, leaning against a crate, his hat low, sizing up the crowd like a wolf eyeing a flock. Hope he's just passing through, you mutter, hand brushing the knife at your belt. Historians still debate whether the railroad united a nation or fractured it, stitching coasts together while tearing through native lands like a blade. The tracks cut across hunting grounds, sacred sites, and treaties that were already crumbling like dry leaves. You've heard of tribes, the Lakota, the Cheyenne, derailing trains in defiance. Their sabotage, a desperate cry against the steel that binds their world. You feel the tension when a group of Shoshone ride by the depot, their faces unreadable, their horses' hooves kicking up dust that settles like an accusation. You nod respectfully, but they don't return it, and you don't blame them. The railroad's progress is their loss, every mile a step toward erasure. The telegraph wires hum alongside the tracks, thin copper threads carrying words faster than any Pony Express. You send a message to a cousin in St. Louis, the clerk tapping out your words in Morse code, each click a marvel that shrinks the world. Made it to Oregon. Cabin up. Send whiskey. You write, grinning at the thought of his reply. The telegraph's a game changer. Sheriffs call for backup. Ranchers, track markets, and news of gold strikes spreads like wildfire. But it's another nail in the frontier's coffin, tying the wild to civilization's leash. You joke. Next, they'll string wires to the moon, hope they don't charge me for the call. As you head back to your cabin, the train's whistle fading into the evening, you pass a ghost town, just a few shacks, where the railroad didn't stop. Their windows are dark, their doors swinging in the wind like broken promises. The frontier's shrinking, mile by iron mile, and you feel it in your bones. a mix of relief and regret. You light a fire that night, the logs crackling as you sip coffee that's more grit than flavor, the cup warm in your hands. The railroads brought the world closer, but it's taken something too, the raw, reckless freedom of the wild. You lean back, the fire's glow painting your face, and whisper, "Progress is a lousy guest, shows up uninvited, and eats all your dreams." Sleep comes slow, the hum of wires and the rumble of trains. A new lullaby you're not sure you like. You're trudging through the muddy streets of a boomtown in California, 1849, the air thick with the tang of sweat and the metallic promise of gold. Your boots, caked with dirt, splash through puddles that reflect a sky bruised with storm clouds, and you clutch a worn pan you traded your last good shirt for. The gold rush has turned the frontier into a fever dream, and you're caught in it, elbow to elbow with miners, merchants, and madmen chasing a glint in the rivers. The Sierra Nevada looms in the distance, jagged and indifferent, while the Sacramento Valley hums with the clatter of picks and the shouts of men who smell fortune in every rock. You kneel by a stream, the water ice cold against your hands, and swirl your pan, hoping for a speck of yellow to change your life. Spoiler, it probably won't. The town's a circus. Tents and shacks sprawl like a drunkard's quilt. Saloons spilling light and noise into the night. You pass a makeshift store selling shovels at prices that make a banker blush, the air heavy with the scent of frying bacon and desperation. Men from every corner of the world, China, Mexico, Ireland, huddle around fires, their faces lit by the same greedy hope. You spot a kid, barely old enough to shave, panning with a tin cup instead of a proper pan, his hands trembling from cold or hunger. It's an odd detail that sticks with you. He's tied a red ribbon to his cup, like it's a lucky charm. You chuckle, muttering, "Hope that ribbon's worth more than my luck so far, might trade it for a hot meal." The canonical event is the California Gold Rush, sparked in 1848 when James Marshall found flakes at Sutter's Mill, turning a sleepy valley into a global magnet for wealth seekers. By 2049, tens of thousands called the 49ers flooded in, most finding dirt instead of dreams. You swirl your pan again, the gravel rattling like dice, and come up empty. The stories of men striking it rich are loud, but the truth's quieter. For every nugget found, 100 go bust, their claims staked on hope and bad math. You've seen men sell their last horse for a claim that yielded nothing but blisters, their faces hollow as they board ships back east, broke but too proud to admit it. Historians still debate whether the gold rush built the West or broke it, fueling towns and railroads, or just inflating greed and chaos. It's both, you reckon, as you watch a fight break out over a claim, fists flying while a crowd bets on the winner like it's a cockfight. You steer clear, your pan heavy in your hand, and head to a saloon for a drink you can't afford. The whiskey burns, cheap and harsh, but it dulls the ache of another empty day. Inside, a fiddler plays a jaunty tune, his bow skipping across strings as men clap along, their laughter brittle. You join in, tapping your foot, and joke to the barman, "If gold don't pan out, I'll start panning for tunes more profitable." He snorts, sliding you a refill you didn't ask for. The rush isn't just about gold, it's about what it does to people. You see it in the Chinese miners working claims, others abandoned. Their patience, a sharp contrast to the brawling Americans who think every stream's a jackpot. You see it in the women too, not just Eliza's kind, But those running boarding houses, or panning alongside the men, their skirts tucked up, faces smudged with mud. One woman, her hands rough as bark, sells pies baked from apples she hauled across the plains, each bite sweet and tart, a taste of home in a land that feels anything but. You buy one, the crust flaking in your fingers, and savor it like a memory you didn't know you had. But the rush has a dark side. The rivers are churned to mud, forests hacked down for sluices, and native tribes like the Maidu, whose fishing grounds these once were, pushed out or worse. You've heard whispers of massacres, settlers turning on natives who dare protect their land, their bodies left where they fall. It's not your fight, but it's your shadow, and you feel it when you catch a glimpse of a native watching from the hills, his silhouette still as stone. You're no saint, just a man chasing a speck of gold, but the weight of it all settles in your chest like river silt. Night falls, the town glowing with lanterns and the distant clink of picks that never stop. You camp by the river, the waters murmur a restless lullaby, your bedroll thin against the hard ground. You stare at the stars, brighter than any gold, and think of the men who'll wake tomorrow to pan again, driven by a fever no doctor can cure. You joke to yourself, if I strike it rich, I'm buying a new pan and maybe a ribbon for luck. Sleep comes slow, the river's song mixing with the creak of your own doubts. But you close your eyes, dreaming of gold, or at least a day when your hands don't ache. You're riding across a sun-scorched plain, the horizon shimmering like a mirage, your horse's hooves kicking up dust that tastes gritty on your lips. The years, 1,870, and you're a cowboy now, not by choice, but by necessity. Gold didn't pan out, and herding cattle pays better than panning for dreams. You're part of a crew driving 1,000 head of longhorns from Texas to a railhead in Kansas, the Chisholm Trail stretching beneath you like a dusty vein through the heart of the frontier. The air smells of sweat, leather, and the musky tang of cattle. They're lowing a constant drone that drowns out the wind. Your hat's brim is curled from sun and rain, and your hands ache from gripping reins all day. But there's a freedom in this life, raw and unpolished, like the plains themselves. The cattle move slow, a river of horns and hide, and you ride alongside, whistling sharp to keep stragglers in line. The saddle creaks under you, its leather worn smooth by endless miles, and you squint against the glare, watching for snakes or rustlers who'd steal your herd faster than you can draw your six-shooter. You're no gunslinger, your aim's more hope than precision, but out here, the Colt at your hip is as essential as water. An odd detail catches your eye. One of the other cowboys, a wiry kid named Jake, ties a blue bandana to his saddle horn, claiming it's for his sweetheart back in Abilene. Keeps me from getting shot, he grins, or at least makes me a prettier corpse. You laugh, muttering, better hope she likes dusty corpses than ain't much else out here. The canonical event shaping this life is the rise of the cattle drives in the 1,862nd and 72nd, sparked by the demand for beef in eastern cities and the railroads that made it possible to ship it. After the Civil War, Texas was lousy with longhorns, wild and cheap, and cowboys like you drove them north to railheads, turning open plains into a highway of hooves. The Chisholm Trail alone saw millions of cattle trudged from Texas to Kansas, each drive a months-long saga of stampedes, river crossings, and nights under stars so bright they mock your exhaustion. You've heard of drives where half the herd drowned in a swollen river or scattered in a thunderstorm, leaving cowboys broke and cursing the sky. Historians still debate whether the cowboy was a symbol of rugged individualism or just a hired hand in a brutal industry, glorified by dime novels but paid in blisters and bad coffee. You feel both sides as you ride, your back aching, your throat dry as the dust swirling around you. The work's punishing 18-hour days, sleeping on the ground, eating beans and bacon cooked over a fire that's more smoke than flame. You scoop a spoonful from the chuck wagon's pot, the beans savory but gritty, and joke to Jake, "If this is gourmet, I'm opening a saloon in hell." He chuckles, tossing a biscuit that's hard enough to double as a weapon. The trail's alive with danger. You ford a river, the water churning brown and fast, and nearly lose a calf to the current, your lasso snagging it just in time. At night, you take watch. The campfires glow, painting the herd in flickers of orange, while coyotes howl like they're auditioning for a ghost story. You've heard of rustlers hitting drives, bold enough to cut out dozens of cattle under moonlight, and you keep your rifle close, its weight a cold comfort. Native tribes sometimes demand a toll cattle or supplies to cross their land, and you pay it, knowing a fight's costlier. You remember a Comanche rider who took 2 steers last week, his nod curt but peaceful, his horse's mane braided with beads that glinted like stars. The cowboy life's not just about grit, it's a strange brotherhood. Around the fire, you swap stories with men from Mexico, freed slaves, and drifters with no past worth mentioning. One night, a vaquero strums a guitar, its strings humming a mournful tune that cuts through the dark, and you feel the trail's loneliness lift, just for a moment. You join in, clapping off beat, and quip, "If we're this bad at music, no wonder the cows keep running." The laughter's warm, like the coffee you sip, bitter but grounding. As you near the railhead, the town of Abilene comes into view, its saloons and stockyards, a beacon of rest and rowdiness. You'll sell the herd, pocket your pay, maybe $30 for months of work, and blow it on whiskey or a hot bath before the next drive. The frontier's changing, barbed wire, creeping across the plains, fencing in the open range you love. You lean back in the saddle, the leather creaking, and stare at the sunset, its colors bleeding like a wound. The cowboy's life is fleeting, but for now, it's yours, a dusty, bone-tired freedom that tastes like dust and smells like home. You're sitting on a split-log bench outside your cabin, the morning sun warming your face as you whittle a stick into something vaguely spoon-shaped, the wood's grain rough under your knife. It's Sunday, 1872, and the air carries the faint chime of a bell from a new church down the valley, a rough-hewn building that's more barn than cathedral, but holy all the same. The frontier's a hard place, where death's as common as dust, and faith is the glue holding folks together when the land tries to break them. You tuck the knife away, the shavings curling at your feet like tiny scrolls, and head toward the sound, your boots scuffing the path worn by neighbors seeking solace. The air smells of sage and fresh-cut timber, a reminder that even in this wild place, something sacred's taking root. The church is packed, families squeezed shoulder to shoulder, their clothes patched but clean. The scent of lye soap mingling with the earthy musk of the crowd. You slide onto a pew, the wood creaking under you, and nod to Eliza, her kids fidgeting beside her, their faces scrubbed pink. A preacher, his collar frayed but his voice steady, reads from a Bible worn thin at the edges, his words about hope and endurance, landing like rain on parched soil. You're not much for sermons, but out here, church isn't just about God. It's about community, a place to swap news, share a meal, and remember, you're not alone in this grind. An odd detail catches your eye. A kid in the front row clutches a hymn book upside down, singing off-key with all his heart. You stifle a grin, muttering, "Kids got spirit hope, the Lord's got earplugs." The canonical event shaping this scene is the Second Great Awakening, a religious revival that swept America from the 1792nd to the 1842nd and lingered on the frontier, where circuit-riding preachers like Peter Cartwright brought fire and brimstone sermons to scattered settlements. Their words sparked camp meetings wild, week-long gatherings where folks confessed sins, sang hymns, and wept under starlit skies, seeking salvation in a land that offered none. You've heard tales of those revivals, tents packed with sinners turned saints, the air thick with shouts and hallelujahs. This church is quieter, but the spirit's the same, a lifeline for souls battered by blizzards, bad harvests, and the ghosts of the trail. Historians still debate whether frontier faith was a force for unity or division, knitting communities together or fueling feuds over doctrine. You see, both as the preacher calls for hymns, the crowd's voices rising in a shaky but earnest chorus, blending Methodist fervor with Baptist grit. You join in, your voice rusty, the words half remembered from childhood. The music's simple, but it stirs something deep, like the smell of your mother's bread back east, a memory you didn't know you carried. Afterward, folks spill outside, sharing cornbread and stew from a communal pot, the flavors rich with onions and smoked pork, a feast that warms your belly and your mood. You quip to Eliza, "If heaven's got food this good, I might start praying more." She laughs, handing you a second helping. Faith isn't just Sunday mornings, it's woven into the frontier's daily pulse. You see it in the crosses carved on graves along the Oregon Trail, their wood weathered but standing defiant. You see it when neighbors pray over a sick child, their voices low and urgent, or when a farmer blesses his field before planting, hoping for a harvest that doesn't fail. Religion shapes schools too, as women like Eliza teach kids to read using Bible verses, their lessons a mix of literacy and morality. You've sat in on one, the kids stumbling over, "Thou shalt not steal," while you joked. Hope they learn that before they meet Black Jack's gang. The kids giggled, but Eliza's glare could have melted iron. But faith has its shadows. You've heard of preachers stirring up trouble, calling natives heathens, or splitting towns over baptism styles, sprinkle or dunk, as if God's keeping score. And some use faith as a weapon, justifying land grabs with talk of divine destiny. You think of the Shoshone, their sacred sites now grazed by cattle, and wonder what their prayers sound like, carried on winds you'll never understand. Faith builds churches, but it also builds walls, and you're not sure where you stand on the divide. As you walk back to your cabin, the bells chime fading behind you. The sun dips low, painting the hills gold. You pass a family singing a hymn by their fire, their voices soft but clear, a thread of hope in the dusk. You pause, the melody wrapping around you like a warm coat, and feel the frontier's heartbeat, faith, flawed and fierce, holding fast against the wild. You joke to yourself, "If I ever meet St. Peter, I'm asking for a softer pew." Back home, you light your fire, the logs crackling as shadows dance on the walls, and drift off, the day's hymns echoing in your dreams like a promise you hope the frontier keeps. You're knee-deep in a field, the soil clinging to your boots like a jealous lover as you swing a hoe to break the stubborn earth. It's 1873, and the Oregon sun beats down, turning your shirt damp with sweat that smells of salt and determination. The frontier's no longer just a dream. It's a fight to turn wilderness into something that feeds you. Your cabin's a speck in the distance, smoke curling from its chimney like a lazy signal to the sky. You're planting corn, each seed a tiny prayer for a harvest that'll see you through winter. The air's thick with the scent of turned dirt and blooming sage, and every swing of the hoe sends a jolt up your arms. A reminder that the land doesn't yield without a struggle. You pause, wiping your brow, and mutter, "If I wanted this much fight, I'd have picked a barroom brawl, less dirt, better beer." The field's your battlefield now, and nature's a worthy opponent. You battle drought, the sun baking the soil to dust, and sudden rains that turn your work into a muddy soup. Weeds sprout faster than your crops, their roots clawing deep, and you yank them out, cursing under your breath. An odd detail catches your eye. A single sunflower, tall and defiant, growing where you didn't plant it, its yellow petals like a middle finger to the wilderness. You laugh, saying, "All right, you win this round. Stay there, you cocky weed." It's a small victory, this rogue flower, but out here, you take what joy you can get. The canonical event shaping this struggle is the Homestead Act of 1862, a government promise of 160 acres to anyone who'd farm it for 5 years. It turned dreamers into dirt farmers, luring thousands to plow the frontier into submission. You're one of them, your claim marked by stakes and sweat, each furrow a line in the story of a tamed West. But taming's a generous word, more like wrestling a bear that doesn't tire. You've seen neighbors give up, their fields choked with weeds, their cabins abandoned to the wind. The land's a teacher, harsh and unforgiving, and you're learning fast. Plant deep, pray hard, and keep your axe sharp for the roots that fight back. Historians still debate whether the Homestead Act built a nation of farmers or just broke hearts with false promises, as nearly half the claims failed, beaten by drought, debt, or despair. You feel the weight of that as you dig a ditch to divert creek water, the shovel biting into earth that's hard as stone. Irrigation's your lifeline, but the creek's fickle, shrinking in summer, flooding in spring. You've heard of farmers in California building dams, turning deserts into orchards, but here it's just you, a shovel, and a hope that the water listens. You share a meal with Eliza's family that night, her cornbread warm and crumbly, paired with beans that taste like home, if home were a campfire. Better than trail grub, you quip, and she smirks. That's not saying much hardtack could break a horse's jaw. The work's not just fields. You fell trees for fences, the axe's rhythm a steady thump, the wood's piney scent sharp in your nose. You build a barn, neighbors pitching in, their hammers ringing like a choir of purpose. Livestock's next cows for milk, pigs for bacon, chickens clucking like they own the place. You chase a rogue hen, its feathers flying as you dive into the dust, and laugh. If I can't catch a chicken, how am I going to tame a whole farm? The kids nearby giggle, turning your failure into a game. But failure's real out here. Locusts can strip a field in a day, frost can kill a crop overnight, and you've seen wolves eyeing your pigs like they're planning a feast. Community's your shield. You trade seeds with a neighbor, his wheat for your corn, and help mend his fence when a storm snaps it like kindling. You learn from Eliza how to dry apples, their sweet tart smell filling her cabin as she slices them thin, each piece a promise of winter pies. The frontier's teaching you resilience, but it's also teaching you humility. Nature's bigger than your plans, and you're just a tenant, not a king. You think of the natives, their fields burned or fenced by settlers, and wonder how they coaxed life from this land for centuries without your clumsy tools. As dusk settles, the sky a bruise of purple and gold, you sit on a stump, your hands blistered, but your field taking shape, rows stretching like a map of your stubbornness. The sunflower stands tall, swaying in the breeze, and you nod to it like an old friend. The frontier's not tamed, not yet, but you're carving out a piece of it, one sore muscle at a time. You head inside, the fire crackling, its warmth a soft reward. Sleep pulls you under, the smell of earth still on your skin, and you dream of green fields under a kinder sun, hoping the land lets you win this round. You're leaning against your cabin's rough-hewn wall, the wood scratching your back as you sip bitter coffee from a tin mug, the steam curling in the chilly dawn of 1875. The valley's quiet, save for the distant low of cattle and the rustle of leaves skittering across your field like nervous ghosts. The frontier's myths, cowboys, gold, endless opportunity glow bright in the stories told back east. But out here, they've got a darker edge, sharp as the knife at your belt. You've heard the tales spun in saloons of heroes taming the wild, but you've seen the blood behind the ballads, the feuds and massacres that stain the land like spilled ink. You spit into the dirt, the taste of coffee lingering, and mutter, "If this is the Wild West, it's wilder than the dime novels, led on more graves than glory." You walk to the settlement, your boots crunching gravel, the air heavy with the scent of damp earth and wood smoke. The town's grown a general store, a blacksmith, a saloon with a piano that's more out of tune than your last attempt at singing. But beneath the bustle, there's a current of violence, like a river ready to overflow. You pass a tree scarred with bullet holes, a reminder of last month's shootout when two ranchers settled a fence dispute with lead instead of words. An odd detail catches you. A child's toy horse, carved from pine, lies abandoned in the dust near the tree. Its wooden legs snapped like it was caught in the crossfire. You pick it up, turning it in your hands, and quip, "Poor fella didn't stand a chance in this town's version of justice." The canonical event that casts a shadow here is the Sand Creek Massacre of 1864, when Colorado militia slaughtered over 150 Cheyenne and Arapaho, mostly women and children, in a dawn raid that shocked even the hardened frontier. The attack, led by Colonel John Chivington, was called a battle by some, a butchery by others, and it sparked years of retaliation, turning the plains into a chessboard of blood and vengeance. You've heard survivors' stories whispered by traders, their voices low as they describe bodies left in the snow, the air thick with gunpowder and grief. It's not your fight, but it's your world, and every fence you build feels like a line drawn on someone else's map. Historians still debate whether the frontier's violence was inevitable chaos or a deliberate tool of expansion, clearing the way for settlers by breaking native resistance and rival claims. You see it in the small feuds too, ranchers against farmers, miners against merchants, each skirmish a spark that could ignite a wildfire. Last week, a cattleman shot a homesteader over a stray cow, the body left in a ditch until the sheriff, a man with a badge shinier than his morals, hauled it away. You were there when they buried him, the preacher's words drowned by the widow's sobs, the grave's dirt as red as the blood it covered. You helped dig, your shovel biting into earth that felt too heavy, and joked to Eliza later, "If we keep burying folks, we'll need a bigger cemetery, or at least better aim." Violence isn't just men with guns. It's the land itself, fighting back with blizzards that freeze cattle mid-step or droughts that turn fields to dust. You've seen neighbors lose everything to a grass fire, their cabins reduced to ash while they stood, faces smudged, watching dreams burn. And then there's the tension with the natives. Their raids less frequent, but no less fierce, driven by desperation as their hunting grounds shrink. You've traded with them, shared a pipe once. The tobaccos bite sharp in your throat, but trust is thin when every side's armed and scared. You keep your rifle loaded, not out of hate but habit, the frontier's law, written in survival. Night falls, and you sit by the saloon's fire, the room alive with laughter and the clink of glasses. A fiddler plays, his notes wild and jagged, matching the mood of men who've seen too much. You join a card game, the cards greasy under your fingers, and win a hand with a bluff that feels like a metaphor for this life. Fake it till you make it, or until someone pulls a gun. You quip, "If I lose, I'm paying with that toy horse, only thing I've got left." The table laughs, but their eyes are wary, hands close to holsters. As you walk home under a moon sharp as a blade, the stars glitter like bullet casings scattered across the sky. The frontier's myths are built on blood, not just bravery, and you feel it in the silence, heavy as a loaded chamber. You reach your cabin, the fire banked low, its embers glowing like eyes in the dark. Sleep comes slow, the toy horse on your table, a small reminder of innocence, lost in a land that chews up dreams and spits out stories. You're standing in your field, the late summer sun of 1890 baking the earth under your boots, the air thick with the scent of ripe corn and the faint tang of dust. Your hands, calloused and cracked, grip a hoe as you survey the rows you've carved from the wilderness, each stalk a small victory against the frontier's stubborn heart. But something feels different today. A quiet shift, like the moment before a storm breaks. You've heard the news, whispered in the settlement, like a secret nobody wants to believe. The U.S. Census Bureau has declared the frontier closed. No more wild line on the map, no more unclaimed spaces. The West, your West, is tamed, or so they say. You snort, muttering, "Tamed? Tell that to the locusts and the blizzards. They didn't get the memo." You walk to the edge of your land, where the creek runs low, its water glinting like a broken promise. The frontier's changed since you rolled in with your wagon, creaking and hopeful. Railroads crisscross the valley now, their iron tracks stitching the land together, and towns have sprouted stores, schools, even a telegraph office that hums with news from a world you barely recognize. You pass a new fence, its barbed wire gleaming like a warning, and spot an odd detail. A tattered wanted poster, half buried in the dirt, its ink faded, but still naming some outlaw, long gone or dead. You pick it up, the paper crumbling in your hands, and chuckle. Guess you didn't make the history books. Pal, hope you at least got a good story. The canonical event is that 1890 Census Declaration, a bureaucratic stamp that said the American frontier, that vast, untamed dream, was no more. The land's been measured, mapped, and sold, carved into farms and ranches, with railroads and telegraphs tying it to the east like a leash. You've seen it happen, settlers flooding in, native tribes pushed to reservations, buffalo herds slaughtered to near extinction. The frontier's not gone, not really. It's just fenced, plowed, and claimed. Its wildness a memory, fading like the poster in your hand. You think of the Oklahoma land rush of 1889, when thousands raced to stake claims in a single chaotic day, hooves and wagon wheels churning the earth into a frenzy. It was less a rush than a reckoning, the last gasp of open land. Historians still debate whether the frontier's closing was a triumph of progress or a tragedy of loss, a nation forged or a spirit smothered. You feel both as you walk back to your cabin, the sun dipping low, painting the hills in shades of fire and shadow. The land's given you a home, a life, but it's taken two native homes, wild spaces, the raw freedom you tasted on the trail. You pass Eliza's place, her garden thriving, her kids chasing a stray dog that yaps like it owns the valley. She waves, offering a slice of apple pie, its cinnamon-sweet warmth, a comfort you didn't know you needed. You take a bite, the crust flaky and perfect, and quip, "If this is civilization, I might not hate it long as the pie keeps coming." She laughs, but her eyes hold a flicker of the old wild, a spark that says the frontier's not dead in her heart. The town's buzzing with new faces, folks who arrived by train, not wagon, their hands soft and their dreams softer. You see it in the new schoolhouse, its bell ringing sharp and clear, or the general store stocked with canned goods from Chicago. No more trading pelts for flour, but progress has a price. You've heard of tribes like the Lakota, confined to reservations, their children sent to boarding schools to unlearn their language, their songs silenced. You think of the turquoise bead in your pocket, a relic from a time when this land held other stories, and feel a pang, like a splinter you can't pull out. Night falls, and you sit by your fire, the logs crackling as shadows dance on the walls. The frontier's legacy isn't just fields and fences, it's the tension between what was gained and what was lost. You've built something here, but the cost lingers in the air, heavy as smoke. You pull out the wanted poster, its edges frayed, and toss it into the flames, watching it curl and blacken. "Here's to the wild," you whisper, a half-joke to the empty room. "May it haunt us a little longer." Sleep comes slow, the fire's glow fading, the frontier's end settling over you like dust. Quiet but heavy, a chapter closed but not forgotten. You're sitting on your cabin's porch, the wood creaking under you as the first stars prick the indigo sky of 1895. The air's cool, carrying the scent of pine and the faint sweetness of ripening apples from your small orchard. Your hands, rough as the bark you've spent years wrestling, cradle a tin mug of coffee, its warmth seeping into your palms like a quiet apology from the frontier. The valley's changed fences crisscross the hills. Smoke rises from new chimneys, and the railroad's hum is a constant undercurrent, like the land's new heartbeat. The frontier's gone, they say, its wild edges sanded down by progress, but its spirit lingers in you, in the calluses on your hands, in the stories carved into your memory like ruts in a trail. You lean back, the night soft around you, and let the past flicker like the firelight in your cabin. You think of the journey that brought you here, the wagon's creak, the trail's dust, the graves you passed with names already fading. You think of Eliza, her hands stitching community from wilderness, and the natives whose shadows still haunt the ridges, their lives rewritten by your arrival. The frontier wasn't just land, it was a crucible, forging grit and grief in equal measure. You smile wryly, muttering, "Built a nation, broke a few hearts, guess that's the deal." An odd detail surfaces. A rusted spur you found in the field last week, half buried, like a relic of some cowboy's lost dream. You kept it, a keepsake of a time when the West was all gallop and gamble. The canonical event that echoes now is Frederick Jackson Turner's 1893 thesis delivered at a Chicago fair, claiming the frontier's closing shaped America's soul, its democracy, its restlessness, its stubborn belief in second chances. He said the frontier made you, taught you to adapt, to rely on your hands and your neighbors, to carve order from chaos. You see it in your own life. The cabin you built, the fields you plowed, the nights you shared, stew with folks who became family. But Turner didn't mention the cost the tribes displaced. The buffalo vanished, the blood soaked into the soil. Historians still debate whether his thesis romanticized a brutal truth or captured a real spark. But you live the answer, your life, a thread in the frontier's messy tapestry. You walk to the orchard, the grass soft underfoot, and pick an apple, its skin cool and taut. You bite into it, the juice sharp and sweet, a taste of the land you've fought for, the frontier's myths, cowboys, pioneers, gold seekers, live on in dime novels and campfire tales. But you know the real story, sweat, loss, and a stubborn hope that outlasted both. You think of the kids in town, learning to read in a schoolhouse you helped raise, their laughter brighter than any gold nugget. You joke to yourself, if I'd known it'd end like this, I'd have packed more apples, less dust, better payoff. The thought warms you like the coffee, now cooling in your mug. As the night deepens, the stars blur into a soft haze, and you feel the frontier's weight settle, not heavy, but gentle, like a quilt draped over your shoulders. You head inside, the fire's embers glowing like memories, their warmth a quiet promise. The West isn't wild anymore, but its spirit lives in you in every fence post, every harvest, every neighbor's nod. You lie on your straw tick, the cabin creaking softly, and let the silence carry you. The frontier's gone, but it's left you something. A life built from scratch, a story no one can erase. You're drifting now, the cabin's warmth wrapping around you like a lullaby, the fire's last embers fading into a gentle glow. The frontier's story lingers, soft as the night outside, its edges blurring like a dream you're not ready to leave. You've walked its trails, built its homes, felt its losses and triumphs in your bones. The West wasn't just a place, it was a pulse, a challenge, a mirror reflecting the best and worst of what you could be. Its myths of cowboys and pioneers, of freedom and struggle still whisper in the wind, carried through time to anyone who listens. You're part of that now, your hands marked by its dirt, your heart by its fire. Let the stars keep watch, let the land hold its secrets. You've earned your rest. Sleep deep, dreamer, and let the frontier's echo sing you into tomorrow.